Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born? And what was your given name?
Hi, Calvin. The world knows me by the name from the movies, but I was born James Burke on July 5th, 1931, right in New York City. I actually started out life as James Conway before my mother abandoned me when I was just 2 years old. I never even knew who my real father was.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
Growing up was rough, to put it lightly. Since I was abandoned so early, I spent my childhood getting shuffled around from one foster family to the next. I was exposed to a lot of abuse and neglect in those homes, and I didn't have any real family structure or roots to tie me down. By the time I was a teenager, I was already running wild on the streets of New York.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
The name that stuck with me through my whole criminal career was Jimmy the Gent. People gave me that nickname because I had a habit of tipping heavily, especially to truck drivers. When I would hijack a truck or pull off a job, I'd make sure to slip the driver a $50 or $100 bill so they wouldn't get into trouble with their bosses and to keep them quiet. I guess I tried to wrap a little politeness around a dirty business.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
I wasn't much for the classroom, Calvin. With the constant moving around between foster homes and getting into trouble early on, my schooling was practically non-existent. I spent my time learning how to survive on the streets rather than reading textbooks. And by the time most kids were finishing school, I was already deeply involved in forgery and street crime.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
The decision that really locked in my future was aligning myself with the Lucchese crime family in New York back in the 1950s. I started out doing small favors, hauling untaxed liquor and bootleg cigarettes. At the time, it just felt like a quick way for an uneducated guy to make a decent buck. But it officially pulled me into the orbit of Paul Vario and the Mafia, setting the stage for everything else I did.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement, and what were the consequences?
My first official conviction on the record happened in 1949 when I was about 18 years old. I got busted for forgery. I ended up pulling time for that, and it was just the first of many stretches behind bars. It taught me how the system worked, but it sure didn't slow me down.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
That moment came on December 11th, 1978, when the Lufthansa heist went down at John F. Kennedy International Airport. We walked away with over $5 million in cash and nearly $1 million in jewelry. It broke nationally as the largest cash robbery in American history at the time. When the FBI and the media went into an absolute frenzy trying to figure out who pulled it off, I knew things would never be the same again.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
The massive heat from the Lufthansa robbery made me incredibly dangerous. I wouldn't say it exposed who I was, it brought out a deep paranoia. When you have millions of dollars and the federal government is breathing down your neck, everyone looks like a threat. I started ordering the murders of my own crew, guys like Tommy DeSimone and Marty Krugman, just to make sure nobody would turn state's evidence to save their own skin.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person? Society? Or your own instincts?
It was absolutely a person. I was betrayed by Henry Hill, a guy I had mentored since the 1960s. We had been through everything together, from hijacking trucks to trafficking narcotics. When the law finally caught up to Henry on drug charges in 1980, he broke the code of silence and became a federal informant, putting a target right on my back to secure his own freedom.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People think of me solely as a bank robber and a hijacker, but I ran all my operations out of a regular neighborhood tavern I owned called Robert's Lounge in South Ozone Park, Queens. It looked like a normal local watering hole on the surface, but the cellar and the backyard were the central hub for our entire crew's illegal rackets. and occasionally, it served as a burial ground for people who crossed us.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
Because I am of Irish descent, I could never become a made man in the Italian mafia, so my rivalries weren't typical mob wars. My biggest battles were keeping the law at bay and managing the unstable personalities in my own crew, like William Billy Bats Bentvina, whose murder at Robert's Lounge caused us a mountain of trouble.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
Privately, I was constantly fighting to stay ahead of the Lucchese family's own rules while maintaining my status. The bosses had a strict ban on trafficking illegal narcotics because they feared the heavy sentences would make guys flip. Henry Hill and I were secretly running a massive drug operation behind the family's back, constantly risking our lives within our own organization.
What was your darkest moment, and was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
My darkest moments were spent inside federal penitentiaries. In 1972, Henry Hill and I were arrested for extortion down in Tampa, Florida, for beating a guy who owed a gambling debt. I got hit with a 10-year sentence and pulled 6 years in Lewisburg before getting paroled. Being locked up away from the street operations always tasted bitter, but the lifestyle was too lucrative to ever truly walk away from.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
They never actually managed to convict me for the Lufthansa heist itself. Instead, after Henry Hill started talking, I was convicted in 1982 for conspiracy charges related to the 1978 Boston College basketball point shaving scandal, which got me 12 years. While I was serving that time, they pinned the 1979 murder of a drug dealer named Richard Eaton on me, which brought an additional sentence of 20 years to life.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you? And what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The craziest thing is how people romanticized the body count. While I was definitely responsible for eliminating people after the Lufthansa job to protect myself, the rumor mill credited me with personally committing almost every unsolved mob disappearance in Queens during the late 70s.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
The biggest misconception is that the gangster life is all glamour, money, and loyalty. The reality is that there is no real loyalty. The moment the pressure gets turned up, the same guys you eat dinner with will hand you over to the feds, and you end up spending your life looking over your shoulder until you're locked in a cage.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on April 13th, 1996, while I was serving out my life sentence at the Wendy Correctional Facility. I had developed lung cancer and was being treated at the Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center in Buffalo, New York, when my time finally ran out at 64 years old.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
Just keep in mind that the stories you see on the movie screen leave out the cold reality of how it all ends. Crime might buy you a lot of influence for a little while, but it always collects its debt in the end.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.